Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Okay. So, Keith, we'd like to make this a little more personal. So if we could start off, kind of just tell us your life growing up as a child. Maybe did you have any entrepreneurial experiences as a kid? Did you mow lawns for money? What do you have?
Not much. So I grew up in Idaho, Idaho Falls. I was actually born, my mom was born and raised in a little town outside Idaho Falls called Swan Valley. And it's, I think there's 300 people who live there. And growing up, I come from just a really, really normal family. My grandparents lived in one house, like they built it, lived there their whole lives, died in it. My parents live in one house. My dad had one job. And I didn't grow up around entrepreneurial people or even professional people. I can remember it. I mean, you're going to laugh because you're going into accounting. But I was in the 4th grade, Mrs. Trubel's class, and they said that an accountant could make 90 grand. And I was like, I'm going to be an accountant. I had no idea what they did. I was good at math, terrible at English. So I decided I was going to be an accountant. And 9th grade, Ted Baker's social studies class, his daughter was an accountant in Denver, Colorado.
Was it true? Did she make $90,000?
No, but a partner there could make 150. And I was like, you know, I could never be a doctor. Those are the only people I knew made money. So I decided I was going to be an accountant. Again, I had no idea what they did. Went to Boise State my freshman year of college and came to BYU. I like to tell everybody because they had a great accounting program. Reality is the girls were better looking here. And yeah, and so then I, went to college. But I did the little things, mowed lawns, did that stuff, but never really understood what entrepreneurs were. So I was going to go do accounting. Went to Deloitte & Touche in Denver. That's where my wife's from. And I thought I was going to do that for the rest of my life. I was good at it, so I was progressing. And then my best friend, who's a guy named Todd Peterson, who's now the CEO of Vivint, he called me one day and was like, hey, this business I've been doing? I'm like, yeah. And he'd call me every year, and I'd help him with things. And I remember the year before, not that year, but the year before, he called me at the beginning of the year, and he's like, hey, will you look at these numbers? I'm like, sure. So I sat down, looked at the numbers. So these are great if you're doing 20,000 accounts. He's like, we're going to do it, no problem. I said, but what happens if you do 12? He's like, well, we're not going to do 12. I said, well, what happens if you do? He's like, well, we lose money. And then at the end of the summer, he called me. I was like, hey, how'd it go? And he goes, we did 12. And it wasn't so rosy. And then he called at a point in time where there was a transition in my life. I was going to go do a national assignment in New York City. And he said, hey, I need some help. Will you come help me? And I said, I don't know. I said, I'll come be your partner. I'll look at it. I won't come be your accountant. And came over, and it just fell into place. And, that's how I got to be an entrepreneur by accident.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because from here it seems a little odd that you would leave your dream to become partner at an accounting firm, to make $150,000 and go be an entrepreneur and start a billion-dollar company. I mean, what did Todd say, or what did he do that convinced you that that was a good idea?
Nothing. I approached it. Actually, I have the reality of all of this is I believe in sometimes you do things and it's the right thing and you can't really tell why. A year before that, I had the chance to go be the CEO of one of my clients. And Todd was actually going to come work for me. Or we were going to be partners and go do this thing. It was a great business. It's going to be an unbelievable business. It was right when they started running fiber all over the place. And you see these trucks all over now. They're called a vac and dig, and it allows you to go to a street and dig up a pothole size thing of the asphalt, and then you can trench down using an air knife and a vacuum. And you can dig down and see the whatever's down there, a pipe or a cable. Then you can watch the directional boring machine go under. And when this guy was selling like 6 a year, and he went to like selling like 6 a month. And I went to do it, and everything made sense. But then it just didn't make sense. You know, I was like, this isn't the right thing for me to do. And when I came here, nothing made sense. It just felt like the right thing to do. And my ex-sister-in-law had made her husband move back to California. That's where she was from. And my wife was just like, I can't believe that. How can she do that, not be supportive, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then I came along and said, hey, guess who called? Todd. And she's like, what? And I'm going to go do this. And she's like, oh, okay, I'm going to be the supportive wife. So it did make sense. That's where, and I still, you know, and accounting was great. I really liked the business of professional services. I think that probably I don't do well in large organizations, large political organizations. I'm not good at it. I'm pretty direct, pretty blunt. Like to win, like to get things done, but I don't really do well in those large organizations, and just felt right and we went and did it.
So when you left and you went to start this company with Todd, was he making money at that point? Was he still doing 12 accounts a year? Had something changed? Was he actually successful?
So he had one good year. And
that was enough to convince you?
No, you know, it was just timing. I mean, I really treated it like a 2-year assignment. I said, I'll go try this. If in 2 years we don't like it, I can always come back to public accounting. And Todd had a business at the time, and like most entrepreneurs, he thought it was bigger than what it really was. I didn't look at the books. I didn't do anything. I just came to work with my best friend. And and it was, the next year we didn't make money, I can assure you of that. And 2 years later, I was in debt and couldn't go back and was stuck. And we got out of some other businesses that he was involved in, and we got into the alarm business because the pest control company we were working with, one of them didn't pay us, and the other one canceled our contract. And we said, maybe we can do alarms. And we had some other things going on that Todd had with these other partners, and I said, I'm just going to focus on alarms. I said, if we can do 8,000 accounts, that was our goal. If we can get this thing up to 8,000 accounts a year, we can make money. And I run real numbers, and at 8,000 accounts we could. In our third year, we did 7,600 accounts, and we made money. So that was the genius of it. I think we can do it.
So you're here. You come with your best friend, and like you said, for the first couple of years it was tough. How did you get through those tough times? Did that put strain on your relationship as friends? Are you guys still friends?
Yeah, it actually the hard years were the easy years in the friendship. We're still friends. We're more like estranged brothers that are getting back together. And if he was here, I think he'd probably say the same thing. You know, people think that companies are overnight successes, and I left at the end of '09, right going into 2010, and when I felt we finally had how would I put it? In 2009, we raised capital when you couldn't raise capital. We raised debt. We never raised any equity, and we had things to a point that I was like, we're finally to a point where only we can screw this up. No, nothing outside. And we've been in business for I don't know how many years, and we're doing over 100,000 accounts a year. And I was like, we're finally to the point. Every year before that, I really thought there was a possibility we couldn't get through that year. Because it's hard. It's hard to start. It's hard to scale. It's hard to do all those things. So through that, it was stressful, but what really made it get stressful was when the management expanded. It wasn't just him and I. We had a whole team, and we didn't communicate well. But I think it actually ran its course. Partnerships aren't designed to last forever. I mean, if you think they are, great. I hope they do. I don't really think they do, though. They kind of have a life. And with our business, we kind of needed to have a one-headed monster instead of a two-headed monster. We probably could have figured it out, but it worked out better, I think, the way we did it.
So let's talk a little bit about how you guys work together. So you said communication was the key. So did you guys share an office? Was it every single problem you worked out together, or was it clear communication, who had what duties? How did you work that out?
Not very well. I'm an operator. Todd's a great recruiter, and it just kind of worked. It's like going and saying to a husband and wife, how do you work those things out? It just kind of happens. If you really have to specify that, we just knew what I did well and what he did well, and it worked really, really well. And I think it's like if you're trying to scale something at the rate we were scaling, communication is key. And I wouldn't go back and change anything. I wish that our relationship was, but I wouldn't go back from a business perspective or anything and change anything. Maybe a few things here and there, just conversations that you'd like to say, man, I wish we could have that over with, I'm sure on both sides, but it kind of lived its course, and now I can look back on it and say, you know what, all those things were great. They were good things. We went from selling, our first summer we did 800 accounts to selling 180,000 accounts. From having 20-something reps to having 2,600 reps and 1,200 installers, and we had 6,000 employees. It's a big undertaking, and it just didn't work the same. I do much better in startup and scaling companies, he does he's just a charismatic guy. He's been that way since we were kids. He was always, I used to joke, if he was here, he'd laugh too, but I said, he's the coolest guy I know, and he really is. If any of you guys, anybody here know him? He's the coolest guy I know. Still, I called him the Fonz, he was just like Arthur Fonzarelli, right? And, now it's to a point, that business is to a point where they're trying to take it to places that, I just have, it wouldn't work for me.
So let's go back to the beginning a little bit. So you had a few rough years. What do you think was the turning point when you guys actually became successful? Was it anything you guys did? What do you think? What would you credit that success?
So I can tell you exactly what it was. We got into this business and we just get it going, and then the people we were working with, so whether it was Protection One or ADT or Turbinex back in they would change something. And when they would change it, it would send ripples through our organization. And I explained, everybody thinks summer sales is really easy. It's probably one of the more difficult businesses to do. And the reason why it's so difficult is because time really matters. Deadlines matter. And what I tell everybody is we would go and spend 8 months winding up this spring as tight as we could wind that spring. And then our secret sauce was our ability to let that spring out slowly over time, to keep the urgency, to keep the intensity. We were going from installing 100 accounts a week to installing 8,000 accounts the next week. You got to have infrastructure and all that stuff. And so these companies would change things, and they changed things at times that didn't work for us. And we'd have to unwind that spring and then wind it back up, and we just didn't have time. And I can remember in 2004, one of those. We even had a contractual relationship with someone that didn't allow them to do that. And I found out what that meant. Didn't mean much. It was, hey, it's 2 weeks before the summer starts, and we're changing it, and if you don't like it, tough, but you can't go anywhere. And I said, hey, Todd, if I'm going to do this anymore, I put everything on the line every year. You put everything on the line every year. We're not going to rely on anybody outside this room. And we're going to become a full-service alarm company, or we're not going to do this anymore, because I'm not going to do it. We're at a size now where we can't recover from this mistake. So we spent 3 years and every dime we had building the infrastructure that allowed us to scale. And if you look at our hockey stick, people think it was this, they think it was that, they think it was all these things. It was when we started being a full-service alarm company where we took care of the customer from beginning to end. We'd sell them, install them, survey them, do everything, and then we went like that. Then we went and built our own equipment, you know. We went and built our own equipment because we couldn't get the companies to build it for us. We went to Honeywell and GE and said, this is what we want. It can't be done. Come on. You know, it was two-way voice over cellular. They said, it can't be done. We're like, I'm pretty sure you can talk over a cell phone. We need to stick that in the panel somehow. It can't be done. So we went in stealth and did it ourselves. Created 2 gig, and they sued us. Said we lied, or I don't know what they did, but we didn't. And, so we just kind of took things into our own hands. And I believe this for you guys as well, is no one will sell your product for you. I don't care what they say. Right? If you're going to rely on someone else to sell your product, then you can't be a sustainable business. Because if that changes for them, it changes for you. And, you know, I just, you know, sometimes people will sell your product, right? But I've never seen it happen with us. So we just became our own sustainable business, and then it was just up to us, right? Could we raise the capital, continue to scale, and could we perform and execute? And we were able to do that. But again, scaling, and I don't know how many of you are trying to scale a business, scaling is a highly leveraged thing, right? If things go good, they go really good. And if they go bad, they go really bad in a hurry. So you got to make sure that you're ready to scale, not just with capital, but with your infrastructure and all those types of things. And with us, we don't get a second chance, right? If things aren't ready, you know, like Vivint right now, you guys probably heard they had a fire across the street here. They got to relocate 650 people, and they start the summer in 3 weeks. Any other business, I'm sure, would be out of business. They couldn't do it. That's what we do. They know how to do it. They're going to have to find a spot for them. They'll figure it out. Any other business, because really in 3 weeks, it's a deadline. If that's not met, we don't just say, hey, guys, just stay at home, come out when we're ready for you. That's not how it works. It drives me crazy with developers. How many of you are developers here? Drive me crazy. I've never seen a deadline they could hit. Maybe you're different. I'm sure this company is. Okay.
Awesome. So let's obviously, Vivint is historically sales driven. So let's talk about what ideas do you have about sales? And you hinted a little bit about that, how nobody else will sell your product. How do you bring people onto your team to sell your product, though, and convince them to do a good job and sell it as you would?
Well, first of all, I believe that salespeople will not sell any more than you can take care of. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is to convince them and have them believe that if they go out and make the sales, you're going to take care of the customers. So I think sales starts first with providing the infrastructure for them to go sell. Not necessarily the product, right? Your product's never going to be perfect. You know, I have a company right now that I've forced them to do inside sales. I'm like, hey, we have a product, people will buy it, it works, it's good, it's stable. It's not exactly what we want, right? There's not every feature we want. But if we waited to have every feature we want, we'd wait a long time, right? I mean, I'm sure Apple doesn't have their iPhone, everything they want on it yet, but they're selling a lot of them. So but the platform has to be stable, and you have to be able to take care of that customer. If you can't, they'll quit selling for you. So that's number one. And then number two, you just cheer, and you set up systems that they can go out and they can be successful in. And then you got to find the right people. And, you know, someone doesn't have to have experience for me to hire them. In fact, I'd prefer a lot of times that they don't. Because sometimes when people come with experience, especially in sales, they think it needs to be done a certain way. And I don't believe that does. I want to find people who are going to come in and figure out the best way to do it. That's what happened in summer sales. We didn't revolutionize summer sales. We didn't come up with the best training in the world. We didn't go out and hire a different person. I mean, we hired the same people as everybody else. The difference was that we allowed them to figure out the best way they could do it, and we just eliminated all the obstacles. And I think that's the same thing, and all I'm looking for is competitive, driven human beings. And if I can find that, they will figure out how to sell it. But if I go out and find people who aren't competitive and aren't driven, I don't care. They're not going to be able to figure out how to sell it.
Okay. So let's leave Vivint, and let's talk a little bit about MoneyReef, if we can. So Vivint is home automation. MoneyReef is completely different. So how did you jump from one to the other? And Where did that idea come from, and how did you go about starting it?
So MoneyReef was kind of a timing thing. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. It was in between Vivint, when I left Vivint, and when I got the check from Vivint. And that was a pretty good day. And I had, and in between those, I had another day. I sold part of my interest in Vivint to some existing shareholders. So, and there were some guys who came to me. They actually were in the pest control business years ago. A guy named Jason Cragen, and he had this idea for a mobile app that I loved. It was the last project I got going when I was at Vivint, and then when I left, he continued to develop, and he ended up selling it to Vivint. And I just think they're a creative team. I think they're very unique. And their ability to design, he's just a great UI guy. And he had some ideas of a thing they call DataReef that they were getting into that kind of is like a scaled down version of Domo in a lot of ways. It was going to provide a lot of tools that I actually used that they were going to make really pretty. And then we got going into it, this MoneyReef came up, and they're just really good UI guys. And I funded them, and we got it going. But at the end of the day, I kind of realized a few things, and it's kind of my investment philosophy, and I can just see that even though we could build a great product, we didn't have the best business model for it to go into. We really hadn't thought through far enough, how are we going to actually get people to buy this? Or what are we going to do with it? And it became very apparent to me that what we really need to do was put this product inside another organization that kind of had that, because it was a really good product. And just so happened I knew a guy at at Money Desktop, and I read an article on him, and I told this one guy, we need to go talk to them, and 2 days later they walked in our office. And we did the deal in 48 hours. And the team went over there, and it worked out good. And now those guys have actually left Money Desktop, some of them, and have gone out and formed their own firm to go do some other stuff. So they're just creative people, and it was right time, right opportunity. And we'll see, hopefully if Money Desktop's really successful, it'll be a profitable venture.
Okay. So what did it take for you to realize that you didn't have the business model scaled? Obviously, accountant, you're kind of a financial background. For those of us entrepreneurs who maybe that isn't our background, how do we know when we have a product? I think as entrepreneurs, we grasp onto an idea, and we're kind of blind to this isn't monetizable. How do we go about making that realization?
Well, first of all, I've come to a philosophy, and that is that I'm going to say there are two types of cultures in businesses. And there are product cultures, I'm going to call them, and there are sales cultures. And people say, I'm going to have one that's got all of them. And I'm like, good luck. I've never seen it. And what I mean by that is there are businesses, and I'm going to take businesses like Google, Facebook, Apple. They're product businesses, right? People love their products. And they put all their time and effort and energy into building these wonderful products that we just go buy. They really don't market them to us. I mean, when was the last time Google marketed to you to show up at Google?
Never.
Never, right? But you go there all the time. They're a product-driven business. And then there are sales-driven businesses. And those businesses have to have great products. That's a given. You can't have crappy products anymore. You've got to have great products. But your culture is going to be sales-driven, meaning, like you take Omniture, for example. It's a sales-driven environment, or Qualtrics, my good friend Ryan Smith. It's a sales-driven culture. And I'm probably more leaning towards the sales-driven cultures, because the reason for them is because they can be great businesses at different levels, if that makes sense. You could be a great business and be $1 million business with a sales culture, or a great business and be a $2 million, or a $4 million, $20 million, $100, $1 billion, or $2 billion. With product businesses, you kind of have to be $1 billion company, right? I mean, that's where you kind of have to be. So I think sometimes what we do is we go out and think if we build this great product, that people are just going to come buy it. And I would say that's true, but something's got to get them to come there. There are lots of apps for texting, right? I mean, is Twitter a technological breakthrough? Right? I mean, you could probably build it, right? Send out 144 characters. Not that hard, right? But it's a, but there are winners and there are losers in those, right? There are big winners and then there are everybody else. Facebook, right? They're kind of the social media, no one uses MySpace, is that the competitor or whatever? There are huge winners, and I try to avoid now the product businesses because I don't think that my skill set in that I try to find businesses that can be a great $1 million business or a $20 million business. I am not interested in $1 million businesses just because if there's founders and all, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But I want to be able to be successful at whatever point in time they can finally make a mature product. I don't want them to have to be $1 billion enterprise for them to be successful. So I guess that when you're looking at it, you got to say, can this be a sustainable business at a point that I can be there? I'm helping a person build one right now that we think, I don't know if it's a $100,000 business or a $300,000 business, but I'm not helping him to be an owner. I'm just helping him to create a business. But at some time you have to be realistic and say, is this going to turn into dollars? Meaning, is it either going to turn into dollars that I'm going to have customers paying me to get here so I can continue to scale? Or is it going to turn into dollars, meaning I can go out and get venture money or bigger money to go and do this? I'm less, how would I put it, optimistic on the later. Those who do it are going to make a ton of money. Those who don't, not a good day.
Okay, so now you're actively investing in companies, and so what do you look for in companies? So obviously you're more towards this sales type company that you've talked about. So what do you look for in companies, and how do you make investment decisions?
So again, I don't look at them from a sales or whatever. I look at them and say, can they be a business that's successful at $1 million or $2 million or $3 million? And if they can, I then say, well, what can go beyond that? And then I look and say, are we the right investor? There are lots of businesses I really like that we're not the right investor. We might be expanding a little bit. We hired another guy on. So I have a team over at McColee. McColee is a very sophisticated name. It stands for Mackenzie, Cole, and Presley. They're my 3 kids. And we have a team of me and a guy named Kevin Obar. I don't know if Kevin's here. I have my glasses on. I don't. Oh, there's Kevin. Kevin's the smartest guy that doesn't write code, I know. There's a few guys who might be as smart as him, but they write code. And Kevin's an attorney, Sullivan and Cromwell attorney. He actually sold pest control for us back in the day. And we have a CPA that works with us. And when we usually look at businesses, we go out and look at businesses and say, hey, we're going to write somewhere between a $250,000 and $700,000 check. We're going to take 25 to 30% of the business, and we're going to be actively involved in helping that business to grow. And we try to do about 1 a year, and that's about where we're at. We might start looking at some other businesses because we got on a guy named Rob Stoll. Is Rob here? I don't see him. He's really tall. And we might start looking at some smaller ones. But it's first of all, is it that? And then second of all, do I like the people? If I don't like the people, there's no chance. I don't need to deal with people I don't like. I don't want to deal with people I don't like. And I have a lot of gray hair and I don't need any more. I'm just trying to keep it. And that's pretty much how we look at it. We do a lot of alternative financing. You know, people come with us, they want to do a development, or, you know, they have a really good recurring cash flow or something. We do a lot of that type of stuff. But as far as investing in startups, we're looking for, number one, can the business be successful at different levels? Number two, do we like the team? Like personally like them. Not like am I confident in their capability, like personally like them. And then number three, are we the right investor? And if we're not, we'll sometimes send them to someone else.
Okay. So now that you're investing, is there anything you see in entrepreneurs that you think makes somebody more capable of being successful? Is there a trait or anything that stands out among these people that you invest in?
Yes.
What would that be?
Do you want my secret sauce?
We want it.
I want competitive people. That's what I want. I don't care whatever you're in, you got to be competitive. Because unless you got a patent, if you got a patent, life's a lot easier, right? You can have more time. It's not that it's easier, but you just get more time. But I'm looking for competitive people, and then I'm also kind of looking for, now I'd say I'm starting to look for, do they have the guy? Do they have the person there that you're like, okay, this is someone who can actually take this company, and not only will I invest in them, but someone else will, right? I mean, you look out there, and I think it's a problem with funding of startups right now. There's a problem out there. And the problem is there's really no VCs anymore, right? Back in the day, VCs actually invested in companies and ideas, When was the last time you saw one of them get funded by a VC, unless the person behind them had been successful? Josh James, he could go fund whatever he wants. Everybody's saying, hey, he did it once, he could do it again. Todd Peterson, I think I could go get funding, but if I was just coming out of college, I don't know how. So then you got to go find people like me. We're the venture capitalists now, right? We're the actual people that are willing to write a check on an idea and a team and a small product. I mean, now these people have become, these venture capitals are really growth capital, right? You're already going, you've got revenue. I mean, now they're like, yeah, if you have $1 million in sales, well, how do you get from 0 to $1 million in sales? And so, that's the, that's where I think the opportunity is for people and all that, and we help get them there. I didn't make much sense at the end.
That's okay. I think we'll forgive you.
All right.
So do you have any investments right now you'd like to tell us a little bit about what you're working on?
Yeah. So my funnest investment we just did today, Kevin squirms in his chair, but we have a quarter horse breeding operation.
High tech.
It actually is. People laugh, but it's probably the most technologically advanced thing that we actually do. I'm not supposed to say that, but. And what we do there is quarter horses all have the same birth date, January 1. And so if you have a horse born in January or a horse born in December, they have to race against each other. And they race as 2-year-olds. So it's like a 6th grader run against a senior. And so as we all know, every animal has a mom and a dad, right? So you buy a mare, that's a girl. You breed her to a stallion, a boy. And 11 months and 11 days later, you get a baby. And you raise that baby and you sell it. That's what we do. We buy really good mares. And so what we do is, instead of waiting, we breed the mare, and then we flush the embryo out of the mare 7 days later and put it in another mare, and then we breed her again. So we'll get like 3 or 4 foals a year out of one mare, and they're all born within 3 months of each other. It's probably the most technologically advanced thing we do. So we went to Oklahoma today to look at some of our horses. But some of the other things we're doing, we have a company called Snap Power. Some of you have probably seen it on Kickstarter. We just launched it the other day. It's up to about $360,000 in funding. And that's just pre-orders in our mind. That's a really fun company. We got a whole line of products coming out behind it. We got some really good patented technology that allows us to do that. That's a lot of fun. Kevin's probably going to get some gray hair because he's the quasi-CEO of it, and it's fun. And then the other one we have is a company called NUVI, N-U-V-I. If you go to nuviapp.com, it's a company that we funded a few years ago and we continue to fund. One good thing about companies like people like us is if we believe in it, we'll probably believe in you again. And if you're going to raise money once, I guarantee you're going to need it twice, sometimes 3 times. And that's a social media analytics and monitoring company. And it's going really well. We've got some big contracts with like Business Wire, and then we sell a platform service to lots of other people. We're up to a little over 200 customers, and we got about 315,000 in monthly recurring revenue. So we're pretty happy with that one.
That's awesome. All right, so we have time for some questions. For the sake of video, I'll repeat the question. So
I don't have to put my glasses on.
Okay. All right, so anybody have any questions for Keith? Go ahead.
What's the hardest part about leaving Vivint?
So the question was, what was the hardest part about leaving Vivint?
The hardest part was probably, looking back on it now, at first it's kind of the relinquishment of power. Power is an addictive drug. That was part of it. Big part of it, I think, though, was it was such a competitive environment. I mean, it was a fun environment. There were a lot of relationships there, but you can really kind of maintain them. It wasn't like I was moving somewhere. But not being in the game, I think that's something I have to work on. I work hard on it. I try to not. I'm kind of an all or nothing guy. And that's great. If you want to go start a business and scale it, I'm your dude. It's a tough way to raise children. I have 2 autistic children. So I have an 18-year-old daughter with Asperger's, a 15-year-old son with autism, and a little 4-year-old girl now. At the time when I left, she was 6 months old. So, you know, I kind of had, I got a chance to kind of do a lot of things that I didn't get to do. So that kind of took the sting off it a little bit. But probably not being in the game is the hardest thing.
Okay. Other questions? All right. Go ahead.
So I'm wondering if you can answer me. I have this picture of venture capital. Why do we come to venture capital for the money so that you can take a business and build it fast? So bootstrapping and taking for years and losing your competitive and market things. What's your thoughts on it? What do you offer people?
What do we offer people? So his question was with venture capitalists, you go to them to get money, and what do they offer you in return? And, you know, I always, a really smart guy, probably the best entrepreneur I know, is a guy named Gary Olson up in Idaho Falls. I didn't know he was an entrepreneur at the time. I just thought he souped up snowmobiles. But he started a company called RS&I, very successful company. And Gary told me one time was when we were dealing with ADT and he was dealing with Dish and stuff, he goes, Keith, I can just tell you, this is all you got to know. When you're dealing with those guys over at ADT, this is all you got to know. All you got to understand is how are they compensated. And when you figure out how they are compensated, then you just need to make it so that what you're wanting helps them get more compensated. He's like, it's simple. I'm like, oh, okay. It's the same thing with venture capitalists or anybody, private equity firms. You got to go and say, how are they compensated? And some of them, they're investing their own money. I would say those are the best ones because they're willing to take risks. They understand it. They don't have, if they lose money, they still have their job. But if you look at a lot of the others, they go out and raise funds, and they go out and raise those funds, and then they invest those funds. And their goal is to be successful. We want to say so they return shareholders' money, right? And with a return. But they really want to be successful, so what? They can raise their next fund. And so they don't want to go out and take the risks or the chances on a young startup, because if it doesn't go right, then people can look at them and say, why didn't you invest in them? Right? Keith, why would you invest in NUVI? That's the dumbest thing ever. I don't have to answer that question to someone, but someone else does if NUVI doesn't go bad. That's why the people like me or Todd or Josh or those people can get funded, because when it doesn't go well, they can say, well, of course I did. It's Josh James. It's Todd Peterson. It's Keith Nellesen. It's Ryan Smith. Yeah, you were smart, right? And they'll give those people time to be successful. So that's what's happened, is it's moved down down the totem pole. And you know, I don't want you to think that I think there are some great venture capitalists out there. But usually they're the people who are going to help you scale your business, right? They're like, you're to a point where you've proven that you can go and do something. You've got some traction. You've got some revenue. A lot of them are even profitable. Some of them aren't. But you've got some traction. They can say, we can come in and help you grow this business. So what I would say is try to bootstrap your business until you get to a point where you can actually go and do that, and you show some traction. And then what you're going to find is then they're beating your door down, right? Because they're like, okay, this is the one, and I can jump on this one, and I can justify it to everybody, and it's going to be successful. So that's my opinion. And they got great connections. They really do.
Awesome. You guys give it up for Keith. Oh, we good? Okay. All right, give it up for Keith.
All right, thanks, guys.